Okay, hello, I'm Dennis, and in this video, I'm not going to install a thing. I may talk about some installations, but I'm not going to install anything. What I am going to do, though, is try to answer a question that my sister and I were headed somewhere the other day, and we were just talking, and I do a lot of talking about Linux, and I mentioned that her computer used a Cinnamon desktop. She really didn't understand the concept of what a Linux desktop is. And then I thought, well, I don't either. I didn't either. And some could argue that I don't have a real good concept of it now, but I get the general gist. But I really didn't know how to explain to her exactly what a desktop environment is. She's familiar with Windows, most everybody is. You want to say that when you turn on your computer, the start button at the bottom, maybe some icons on what they call the task bar, other icons on the right side there, what might be called the systems tray, the wallpaper, the picture that you see when your computer comes on, when you open up a file browser. It's all those little things that add together to make a desktop environment. Well, I wanted to be able to explain that in words that anybody and everybody could understand. And I didn't really understand it. My first experience with Linux, other than with Fedora, I'm talking about recent experience, probably 2.5 years ago now, I bought a used computer, and the guy told me it had Windows 7 on it, but when I got it home, it had Ubuntu GNOME. I was lost as the proverbial fart in the whirlwind. I immediately got rid of that and installed Windows 7 on it, and then it wasn't much longer, the support ran out for Windows 7, so I had to go with Windows 10, etc., etc. Anyway, so I just pulled up a browser, and I typed in, what is a Linux desktop? And you get a little blurb right here from itsfoss.com, and I'm going to go to that page here, but a desktop environment is the bundle of components that provide you common graphical user interface, commonly called GUI, elements such as icons, toolbars, wallpapers, desktop widgets, and etc. There are several desktop environments, and these desktop environments determines what your Linux system looks like and how you interact with it. When you click on that, go to itsfoss.com here. It's what is desktop environment with the hyphen in between all four of those words. And right here it just repeats what I just said. This is an incredible article about the different desktop environments and explaining them very well. In fact, this is going to be the basis of all my information that I share right now, is the information that I've gotten off of this blurb or web page. I'll run out of that, so let me go back down here. I read through here, and it explains very well the desktop environment is the bundle of components, etc., etc., and you get that in Windows and Macs. Only in Linux, you have options where you can install different desktops, and it's not necessarily related to the base of the Linux operating system. In other words, like in Arch Linux, you have a base operating system which has nothing but a terminal, no interface other than that at all. And you can install at least 12 different graphical desktops. Anyway, desktop widgets, thanks to the desktop environment, you can use Linux graphically. That wasn't always the case, and that's what most people that even have heard of Linux think, that it's all terminal based. This is the GNOME desktop, which I was faced with that one time I just mentioned here. It took me a minute to even figure out how to open this this button up, the start menu, what I would call the start menu, and then I couldn't find anything that I could find in Windows. I wasn't able just to go to here, and the names primarily is what got me, is not being able to relate mugshot to a picture and information editor more than somebody got a mugshot in jail. So anyway, here it tells you some of the differences of the XFCE desktop and the GNOME desktop, the KDE, LXDE, and the Budgie, just to mention 5 there. Once I read this, and I got a fairly good idea of how to describe what a Linux desktop environment is, I took the list a little further, and I opened up another browser and I typed in list of Linux desktops. And right off the bat here, as images, you can see, I think there's like 40 or 45 here that you can see. But if you come on down, you'll get to the Wikipedia. And I looked at this one right here under It's False, which is where I was there. It only lists those 8. It doesn't have a complete list. So anyway, I went to the desktop environment in the Wikipedia and see what it had to say. In computing, a desktop environment, DE, is an implementation of the desktop metaphor, made of a bundle of programs running on top of a computer operating system that share a common graphical user interface, sometimes described as a graphical shell. The desktop environment was seen mostly on personal computers until the rise of the mobile computing. Desktop GUIs, graphical user interface systems, help the user to easily access and edit files, while they usually do not provide access to all the features found in the underlying operating system. Example, Arts, you can install your desktop, but there's still a lot more that the base install can do without the desktop environment. Instead, the traditional command line interface, CLI, is still used when full control over the operating system is required. That really doesn't help just a new guy wanting to know what a desktop environment is, but it's a pretty good start. And we got a really good read here. The first desktop environment was 1970s by Xerox and was sold with the Xerox Alto in 1970. You'll read on, it says it failed. There was a Lisa and an Apple introduced desktop environment on an affordable personal computer, whatever that was at the time, which also failed in the market. The market's brutal. Desktop environments for the X Windows system. See, Linux uses the X Windows system, and all the interfaces are based on that system. And examples of desktop environments, and it goes through a bunch, including the Windows shell. We got Ambient, Budgie, CDE, common desktop environment. I've never seen that one. Cinnamon, which is what my sister has on Linux Mint. A deepened desktop environment, EDE. I've never heard of this one. It does not exist. That's probably why. Eco or Elo Cobb, Leary Shell, KDE Plasma, Innova, GNU Step, GNU Shell, Etoile, Enlightenment, Lumina, LXD, and just goes on and on. You can see all the different desktop environments. Now that we kind of understand what a desktop environment is, here is the difference between what I'm going to call the big boys, the Windows and the Mac. When you have a computer and it has Windows on it, you have no other options available to you other than what's built into that Windows system. You can't change it. Legally, you can't change it. It is that Windows. It's Windows. Mac, the same way. They have their own operating system, and it's the only one you'll see. High Sierra was the last name I remember hearing, but they may have a new one by now. But anyway, you're limited to what Windows is, and you're limited to what Mac is. Linux, on the other hand, you are limited to almost all of these environments right here. And like the one that said it was discontinued, does not exist. You have options of almost all of these desktop environments, not including what they call Windows managers, which gives you no desktop, basically, and everything is done from command lines. That's what a desktop environment is. I just thought it was a really good question that she asked, and I really didn't have a good, clear, precise answer for. I didn't know what they were. I had no idea what a Linux desktop environment was. And, it took, even when I was trying to think of what it was myself recently here, I was like, well, it includes more than that. It includes more than that. And it's not quite that complicated. One of the things that came to my mind, and this is just my thoughts, that there's not that much difference between Linux operating systems with desktop environments, and I use XFCE, so there's not that much difference between XFCE, Cinnamon, etc., compared to Windows. Now, most of the differences are fundamental, deep underneath the operating system where an end user will never even see it. XFCE's got a start button just like Windows. It has a wallpaper just like Windows. It has a file browser just like Windows. I think one of the problems is that people concentrate on the differences rather than the commonalities. Very much like, I hate to say this, very much like religions across the world and across time. They spend more time discussing the differences rather than what they have in common, the commonalities. And it's the same way in the Linux world. People, they don't understand it, and they think that their way is better without even giving Linux a try. That's what a desktop environment is, and that's going to conclude this video. I hope that this helps somebody understand more what a desktop environment, a Linux desktop environment is, or any desktop environment, Windows, Mac, etc. And I'm going to put these links in the description. Until the next time, thanks for watching, and I'll catch you on another video. Peace. Bye.